Helicopter money for the people, American people that is. Yes, universal basic income could be much closer than we think. We're going to tell you who's going to get the money if this passes. Also, the alternate, aka real, unemployment number is out, and it's 35.7%. That is shadow stats. And we've been talking about that over the past couple weeks, how much higher than the actual number it's going to be. I said about 20%, and we were really close. Let's take a look at the official unemployment number, which is highly flawed, by the way, but let's take a look at it just for giggles here. Let's take a look at an article. This is marketplace.org. It tells us that the unemployment rate spiked to 14.7%, and yes, it does not fully capture all of the job losses. Let's talk about that. But first, let's go to the official chart here. This is the Federal Reserve's actual chart. On this, we see the huge spike over here to the right. And over the past couple weeks, we've been saying that the official number, when that comes out, is going to be about 20% off. Why? Because you have the people, and we've talked about this many times, a lot of people are not counted in this statistic. If you stop looking for work, if you're out of work or don't qualify for unemployment, after just a few months, you're no longer counted in the numbers. So the real number is a lot higher. And let's go to shadow stats for this number. And we see the three different lines here. Now, the red line, the one that was down to about 3.5% for a long time before the shutdown, that is right here at the bottom. We see that that did spike up to almost 15%. That's the 14.7 number. That's the U3 number. That's the official number that they want you to believe, but it's highly flawed. Now, the gray line, that is a little bit more of a broad number. That's the U6. That's put out by the BLS, that's the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and that includes short-term discouraged workers, other what they call marginally attached workers, as well as those that are forced to work part-time because they cannot find full-time employment. And then, of course, we have the shadow stats number. That is in the blue. It's actually over 35%, 35.7 to be exact. Sometimes I cannot believe how accurate we are. I've been saying over the past few weeks, if you've been watching the videos, you probably heard me say the official number is going to be about 20%. So the U3, again, 14.7%. The shadow stats, aka real number, 35.7%. So pretty close to the 20% that we predicted. But here's the real news. It's even worse than what shadow stats is indicating right here. Because all of the people that still cannot get into file unemployment with the website issues and the backlog, they cannot get anyone on the phone. We have a lot of workers in the gig economy that are having a very hard time getting any unemployment. If they do, sometimes it's a very low amount. We also have people that used to have full-time work, now they're part-time, or they had to work from regular 9 to 5 into the gig economy. That's also underemployed. That should be counted in the real numbers, and currently it is not. So now you know the truth of the unemployment picture, closer to 35-36% via shadow stats. But even much worse than that. We are in Great Depression, beyond Great Depression level numbers right now. Hey, but don't worry about it. We've got the Fed back there pumping up the stock market. We see all three indexes in green today on Friday. And then some people say, no, JJ, they can't just pump up stocks. But the Fed, that's not legal, is it? They can't do that. Well, here's the truth. When it comes to the Fed, there is no illegal. The Fed is above the law. Yes, we cannot even audit the Fed. There have been a couple politicians through the years that tried to audit the Fed. Here's an article from 2016. Audit the Fed bill fails despite support from Paul and Sanders. Yes, Bernie Sanders. Rand Paul also was in on that. That was a bipartisan effort. A guy from the left and a guy from the right there, and it failed. You cannot audit the Fed. So how can you prove if they're breaking the law or not? Again, the Fed is above the law. Try to tell that to people, and they think I'm just making things up. So yes, the Fed, they operate in the shadows. They may put some numbers out there. They'll tell you what the balance sheet is. But there's likely a heck of a lot more going on behind the scenes that you and me are not allowed to see. And further evidence of the Fed tinkering with the stock market or pumping up the stock market, let's take a look at the Fed official balance sheet right here. This is total assets. This is what they tell us. Of course, we don't know what they don't tell us. It's up to $6.7 trillion. And we see that it really started surging. Of course, we had the bailouts, the stimulus programs. But if you zoom in a bit here, you see that it really started surging right around March, right when the stock market started tanking. And then some people say, no, JJ, the Federal Reserve Act does not allow this. Well, believe me, the Fed has other ways of tinkering with the stock market and manipulating markets in general. Just think BlackRock, hedge funds, trading firms, and actually even too big to fail banks. They can all get in on the stock market action. And yes, they do team up with the Fed. Next, let's talk about helicopter money for the people. Sorry, I kind of went in reverse order on this. $2,000 a person plus $2,000 per child every month. That's $24,000 a year per person and per child. And I can see it already. A 13-year-old is going to say, give me my $2,000, Mom. I'm going shopping. Article here out of Forbes. This tells us about a bill. Yes, this is a real bill that they are trying to implement. Now, there's a lot of gridlock in Washington, D.C. nowadays, so I think the odds are slim. But let's take a look at what's proposed here. $2,000 per person and per child would send payments to over 90% of Americans. And there's a couple representatives that are putting this out there. This is going to be called the Emergency Money for People Act. And the $2,000 per person and per child age 16 or older is going to go to everyone except for people that make $130,000 a year or more. Now, this will, if passed, will also include a phase-out amount. So you're not going to be completely eliminated if you make more than the cutoff. But the further you are above the income limit, you're going to start getting phased out. It's going to be about 10% for every $10,000 you earn above the limit. So you won't be cut off if you make $10,000 more than the limit. You'll just simply get 90% instead of the full 100% of the payout amount. If that makes sense. All right, so what do we think about this? I mean, there's a few different ways to look at this. I mean, if they're going to create endless money, pass it out to the corporations, the too big to fail banks, if that's happening, and it is happening, a lot of people would rather see it go to the people instead of the corporations. I totally get it. There's also a lot of people that need this money that do not have a chance for employment because of the shutdown. I totally get it. Now, the other thing you have to look at, and I'm just trying to be balanced here, is you have to look at this is going to further incentivize people not to work, right? So if everybody's getting $2,000 a month, and let's say you need some work done. Let's say you need somebody to work on your roof. You're not a roofer yourself. Maybe some of you are, but most people are not. And you get a few quotes. Yeah, I'll replace your roof. Only $70,000. Why would people want to work when they get this type of money coming in? Well, eventually, it's going to lead to severe inflation because you're going to see nobody's going to want to work. You're going to see a huge drop-off in production. And then you say, well, yeah, there'll still be people that work. The companies will just have to pay more to incentivize people to work instead of sitting at home getting $2,000 a month. Well, some companies may be able to do that. Maybe the multinational corporations, the Walmarts, the Targets. But the little mom and pop shop, the little guy, the small business, a lot of them are not going to be able to pay people enough to incentivize them to come and work. So you're going to see a big imbalance with large corporations versus small business if this were to happen. Now, the way it's laid out here, it says that the bill would only last while the Health and Human Services Department declared or continued to declare a public health emergency. But that could take, right, who knows how long. This national emergency or this public health emergency, maybe it'll be gone in a few months. Maybe it'll never be gone. Maybe there'll always be a portion of the population that's going to be infected. And how many people need to be infected to keep it an emergency? Nobody knows. It's really vague language that's put into this. So if 5 people in all of the United States are still infected, is that an emergency? Is it 5,000? Is it 5 million? I mean, what's the number? Right? Nobody knows. So we don't know if this is going to be passed. If it does pass, if it's going to be a few months or years, who knows? Could be permanent. Hope not, for the sake of the health of the people here in the United States. But on the other side, you're going to have many people cheering for this, saying this is the solution. Now, think if this did pass, and think if it lasted for a while, think if it lasted for 6 months, a year or more, a lot of this would just end up going to the financial institutions, as most people are in some sort of debt. So I'm sure the banks and the financial institutions that are starting to see some defaults right now on car loans and late credit card payments, student loans. I'm sure they're all cheering for this to pass to give the people more money to pay to them, to the banks. And with this new purchasing power from the people with $2,000 a month, think about an 18-year-old getting $2,000 a month and how much this could push prices up. You'll see the demand for everything increase, right? And think about the landlords. If a landlord knows that a family with 3 kids has, $8,000 a month coming in, they're probably going to say, oh, instead of $800 a month, how's about $1,800 a month? How's about $2,800 a month in rent? You're probably going to see landlords start bumping up rent big time if this happens. Therefore, anyone trying to make a living by working is going to get kicked in the throat, basically, with this inflationary outcome of this act here. So again, it's just truly amazing, shocking times that we're in right now. If you would have talked to somebody a few years ago and told them that in 2020 we'd be talking about bailouts that are tripling the amount from 2008, or if we'd have been discussing something like this, like a universal basic income, a lot of people said would have said you were crazy. Approaching negative interest rates, we're already just about at zero. And again, something that just a few years ago, even high-level economists on the TV would have laughed at this. This is simply an amazing time to be alive. It's also a scary time to be alive. And I think a lot of us, including myself, are just trying to figure this out. What's going to happen? Deflation, inflation. I think we're going to see a little bit of both. We're going to see some deflation, first of all, with the shock of the job losses, possibly inflation, maybe even hyperinflation down the road if they keep on pumping money into the system. And I want to make this clear. Right now, they are pumping money into the system, but most of it is staying at the top. They're, of course, propping up the banks. We see all the stimulus. Even the Paycheck Protection Program is incentivizing companies to keep employees on the payroll, but it's not enough to really give people a lot more spending power. A lot of people are still barely scraping by, and some people are not scraping by with the type of money they're getting from the stimulus and the Paycheck Protection Program. Personally, what I'm doing, and I've said this before, I'm stacking precious metal, mainly silver. I try to pick up some every month, not as an investment, but mostly as a kind of an insurance policy against hyperinflation, right? And maybe metal won't go up. I'm just trying to diversify. Maybe there'll be deflation. That's what Harry Dent's been saying. He's been saying gold's going to go to $700. I disagree with him on that. But property, and that's what I'm trying to do. The next downturn, the next housing downturn, if property becomes cheaper, I want to move out of the city more into the country where I will have a little bit more land, a little more property, where I can grow some more of my own food, try to be a little more self-sufficient. Maybe even get some chickens. I sure can't do it now where I'm at. I've got neighbors right next to me. Got a very tiny backyard in California. But that's about all for this report here. Let me know what you think about this possible UBI type of income, $2,000 per person every month. What do you think about the real unemployment number at about 35.7%, 20% higher than the official number that we're being told? And how much worse is it going to get? Are we going to see 50% of people unemployed in the United States? It's certainly possible. Thanks everybody for watching this report. Please smash that like button if you like what we talk about, and subscribe and come back for more. Bye everybody.